Hey guys, welcome back. It's me, Rocco, again. Thank you so much for joining me for another album review. And I've been on an Italian kick lately. I'm not gonna lie, I've been listening to a lot of Italian progressive rock bands and starting to listen to a lot of new ones that I haven't heard before. Shout out to the band Museo Rosenbach, who I'm planning on reviewing one of these days, but they were one of those Italian bands that only released one album, just one, and just fucking imploded in on themselves like so many of those other progressive rock bands from my homeland, Italy. Or not my homeland, but my heritage. And today we're going to be continuing on reviewing another album by the fantastic visionary band Banco del Mutuo Soccorso, or just Banco for short, as they would later be known as. And today we're going to be talking about their second album, Darwin, or Darwin, because there's an exclamation mark at the end, which is the second album of their holy trinity, their first three albums that just broke so much ground in Italy, and at least in my opinion, probably the greatest trilogy of progressive rock albums outside of England. And these albums here have just been so influential on me, and it was such a joy to discover them the first time. So again, with all these Italian prog reviews I'm going to be bringing you guys, I just want to emphasize one thing. Don't let the language barrier bother you guys. The Italian language really is just one of the most beautiful and romantic, and I know I'm biased, but really guys, it's such a musical language, and it's just so easy to enjoy the vocals. I mean, I think you could sing anything in Italian and it would sound fantastic. But anyway, that's just my opinion. And at the end of the day, you really don't need to know what the lyrics are saying to enjoy the vocals. Really, vocals and lyrics are definitely two different things. Sure, they go hand in hand. Obviously, like, when you understand the lyrics, it can make the vocals even more powerful. But I think that the emotionality of Francesco Di Giacomo's voice is more than enough. Again, Google Translate. You could easily just type in the lyrics, copy and paste them, translate them, and you get a fantastic translation that I will vouch for as accurate, because I do understand Italian, and the Google Translate version is definitely accurate. So go ahead if you want to read the lyrics. And, on the last Banco review, if you saw me do that one, I mentioned that the lyrics didn't really matter and I didn't really delve into them. But on this album, I highly, highly recommend you read the lyrics, even if you can't understand when they're sung, because this is sung in Italian, of course. I really do think reading them will give you more of an insight into this album and a greater appreciation for it, because this one here is a concept album, and a damn unique one, a damn good concept, one that I really like, especially coming from a science background. I'm a huge science nerd. My career revolves around science, chemicals, and things. And this one here, if you haven't already guessed by the title, or if you just haven't heard of Charles Darwin, famous evolutionary biologist, this album is about the theory of evolution, but it doesn't really get into the science part of it. So again, I just like the whole idea of talking about the theory of evolution, but you don't have to have a science degree to understand this album. This album here deals with more of the human side of it, kind of like dealing with like the struggles that early humans might have faced, and the emergence of the emotions like love, and realizing that we can gather together and be strong and united, rather than individual scavengers just wandering through the forests and hunting. And it's just a really powerful album. It's really awesome. It covers the start of humanity all the way until, well, like the last song kind of touches on civilization coming together, touching on like the Sphinx and the pyramids and those symbols of early human civilization. So really think of this album as a concept album dealing with the dawn of creation, the dawn of time, all the way until like the earliest human civilizations. So really cool, really ambitious. And again, this band here is just super ambitious, super, experimental, especially on this album. And I'll definitely get into how they kind of changed their sound or progressed their sound from their debut. All the main elements are still there from their debut, so if you enjoyed that, don't worry. You're going to like this album a lot. But this one here, it's a lot more experimental, a lot more out there, dare I say, and a lot more ambitious. And the playing is just fucking astounding. I mean, these guys were all virtuosos. Now, in terms of the history behind this album, I don't really have much to say, because this album here came out right after their debut. They both came out in 1972, which is kind of the golden year, the breakthrough period for progressive rock in Italy, and it was the height of progressive rock in England. At this point, prog, believe it or not, was one of the most popular genres. So go figure. Must have been great living back then. But in Italy, this was the year where things were really kicking off. And and really making waves. But yeah, because their debut album just came out shortly before this, earlier in the year, like they didn't really go through many progressions. It's still the same lineup of Francesco Di Giacomo on vocals, Vittorio and Gianni Nocenzi on keyboards, organs, all the keys, all the clarinets, all that shit. Really the masterminds behind the band. And guitarist Marcello Todaro, bass player, I haven't memorized this yet, Renato D'Angelo, and drummer Pierluigi Caldroni. So the same exact lineup of their debut album, but with a little bit more experience, a little bit more refinement to their sound, and a quest to write some adventurous music. And my own personal history with this band is pretty awesome. This album here is actually really special to me because it's the first Italian language progressive rock album I ever heard. And I'll never forget, guys, when I heard this album for the first time, my friend showed me, a really good friend of mine. I should mention, check out his channel. It's called Twin Leopards Entertainment. He makes these amazing, weird movie reviews and just movie reviews in general that are just so entertaining and well edited. So definitely check his channel out. But yeah, that guy, he's the one that said, Rocco, you're fucking Italian. Like, you owe it to yourself to listen to an Italian prog band because they had a great scene there. And I had known about the Italian prog scene. I knew that was a thing, but I never really dived deep into it because there was just so much British prog I was still discovering. But I sat my ass down and we listened to this album. And the first thing that stuck out to me was Francesco Di Giacomo's vocals. I was just enveloped by those vocals. I was amazed. And by the end of the album, I was certain that I had heard one of the greatest vocal performances of all time. And I definitely stand by that. I mean, there's no way you guys wouldn't like this guy, especially if you like operatic vocals. The one thing you have to give this album credit for is the vocal performance. Just stellar, top-notch, steals the show. But trust me, guys, with repeated listens, the music itself and the virtuosity of the players really takes the center stage, because this album here is just really special on the musical front as well. And let's remember here, guys, this album does really go through long instrumental passages before we even get vocals. And then some songs are almost, just like on their debut album, are almost fully instrumental. And then we get just little snippets of vocals here and there. But when they do come in, let me tell you guys, it's a powerful performance. And yeah, from that day forward, I've been obsessed with Italian prog music. I checked out the one after this, Io Sono Nato Libero, which I'm totally reviewing for you guys. And that one there took even longer to get into, but it's probably the best of the trilogy. And then I went back, discovered their debut, which I feel like probably should have been my first listen to this band because it's the most accessible, the most straightforward. This one here has a lot of weird, eccentric moments, pretty much like all prog did in the early 70s. All these bands really had a different kind of vibe and different feel going to it. And they all had one thing in mind. They wanted to be adventurous. They didn't want to stick to the rule books. And they wanted to push the boundaries. And this album here really did. At least for me, anyway. So, classic album. To this day, one of my all-time favorites in progressive rock. And, go on Prog Archives if you don't believe me. You'll see that this album is very highly ranked. I believe if not in the top 20, then the top 30 of all prog albums. So definitely a very well-regarded album. And not just by Italians, but by a lot of the British fans as well. So give it a chance, and you'll thank me later. So anyway, guys, seeing as I don't really have a history to tell you guys for this album, let's dive into the overall review. Okay, so I guess the first thing you guys expect me to talk about is the concept behind the album. And I kind of already discussed it, seeing how it's kind of a retelling of the creation of mankind all the way until the earliest civilizations and dealing with the themes that early humans had to deal with. But I'm not really going to delve too deep in it. What I really want to get across is that this album here is really an album of its time. And I bet you're wondering, like, what is this? What does the theory of evolution have to do with the early 70s? Well, really what it is, this album here is a statement. It's actually a really sly political statement. And let me back up for a second here. The early 70s, late 60s, were a very tumultuous time for Italy. Not going to get into the political specifics, but let's just say there was this left-wing movement going on, and there was a huge influx of British music coming in, and the youth were basically rebelling against the archaic past, the older generations. And you got to remember that Italy had a very strong fascist regime in World War II with Mussolini. And a lot of the parents of these people were part of that regime and supported Mussolini and all that shit. And there was basically a counterculture going on. So, and also, the most important thing is, Italy is basically the capital of the Catholic Church. The Vatican City is just funny enough, it's a sovereign state, but it's just kind of embedded within Rome. And I think 88%, 85% of people in Italy are Catholic. So to write an album, and this is the main point I want to get across, to write an album about the theory of evolution, and not only about the theory of evolution, but this album here has a political stance. It implies multiple times throughout its runtime, and especially in the first track, that you're a simpleton, you're an idiot if you don't support the theory of evolution and you think this supreme magical deity created the world in 7 days. Which must have been pretty inflammatory, especially at the time, early 70s, strong Catholic presence in Italy, and, not as modern as today, where the Catholic Church is actually a proponent of the theory of evolution. So really, today, this wouldn't have been controversial at all. But back then, I think the church was still pretty old-fashioned, and, I guess that says something about the church when, an institution 2,000 years old can just change with the times at the drop of a hat. So, make of that what you will, but yeah, so just think of it as a period piece. And again, today, I don't think anyone's really arguing against the theory of evolution. It's pretty much a supported fact at this point. But just, you gotta appreciate it in the historical context of when it was released and what the band were trying to do in this whole movement. So yeah, pretty adventurous album conceptually. Now musically, oh my god, guys, this album is just, it's just so creative. It's one of those albums where you listen to and you never really heard anything like it. Sure, it has a lot of elements from their first album and a lot of elements from prog in general. It still has that strong classical influence. Again, Gianni Nocenzi and Vittorio Nocenzi, the two brothers, the keyboard wizards on this album, they were classically trained musicians. And on the debut album, that really came through. You would get some long stretches of just pure classical excellence. On this album here, they switch it up a bit. You could tell they've been influenced by a lot of the other music coming out, a lot of the prog rock, because these guys brought in the synthesizers. On the first album, there were no synthesizers. It was all just those electric piano, organs, regular piano, things like that, more classical instruments. But on this album, they're bringing in the Moog synthesizers and all kinds of things like that, creating these weird sounds. Definitely sounds a lot like ELP at points, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. With the classical-inspired keys like Keith Emerson, as well as the synthesized parts and the bombast. There's a lot of bombast on this album, guys. A lot more than their debut. But this might be controversial. I think these guys are just leaps and bounds ahead of ELP. Now, I'm not a huge ELP fan. I think they're a little bit self-indulgent at points. And it just bores me to tears sometimes. So definitely not an ELP fan. Sorry if you guys are. It's not for me. These guys here are like the Italian version of ELP if they were an amazing band, because they have the bombast, they have the synthesizers, but it's never overlong. Things are always changing, and it never feels like they're just being virtuosos for virtuoso's sake. Everything has a strong melody. And even when it gets into some weird avant-garde stuff, it's really memorable. And there's a lot of it on this album. So really, they do retain that classical feel, but it's a lot more varied. And it never really wanders off into a full-length classical composition, like on the debut album with long stretches of the tracks. Unless you want to count the song Cento, Mille Anni Fa L'Amore. I know it's a long-ass song title, where it's pretty much just a classical ballad. But even then, there's some nice synthesizer in the middle there to break it up. So really, you can't really say that any one track on the song is just fully classical inspired. But I like how they make use of it a lot, because of course they're classically trained musicians, but they've expanded themselves. They've learned, they've heard other music, and they're bringing that to the album. And the guitar player as well. If you listen to the first album, the guitar playing, it's good, but it's pretty simplistic. It's either just these regular rockin' riffs every once in a while, or there's some acoustic passages there. Some pretty heavy stuff actually on the debut album. But on this album here, he's a lot more avant-garde. His playing is a lot less straightforward. Never really locks into like an accessible groove. It's always just there to add texture, to add atmosphere to the underlying music by Vittorio and Gianni Nocenzi. It's never really the lead instrument. And at points it does really come to prominence, but it never really takes over from the keyboard sections. But yeah, really weird guitar playing, and really good and unique. I like that. More along the lines of a Robert Fripp than a Steve Howe, I would say, in terms of progressive rock. Or more of a Robert Fripp than a Steve Hackett, if you want to compare it that way. But yeah, great guitar player. Marcello Todaro does a fantastic job. And the music here, again, guys, I mentioned it's a very adventurous album. the music here never stays in one place. On the debut, you would get long stretches, especially Il Giardino del Maggio, where it's just long stretches of the same kind of music reprised over and over again. On this album here, no such luck. I mean, it's just change after change after change. But they never overdo it. It never feels like, a Dream Theater song where right when you're getting into something, it completely changes. It always feels like the perfect length. But definitely a lot more variation within the tracks on this album. And still keeps the same kind of formula. Very long songs here. First one, 14 minutes. The second one, almost 9 minutes. And then side 2 has a bunch of like 5-6 minute tracks. So side 2 has shorter tracks, but side 1 has these 2 big ass epics. And yeah, like, don't let the length of the songs on side 2 fool you guys. Although they're much shorter than those 2 huge ass tracks on side 1, they're no worse. And let me tell you guys, for the longest time, my favorite track on the album, probably still my favorite track on the album, is on side 2. You're gonna have to stay tuned to find out. But really, the quality is just consistent throughout. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, I just want to warn you guys. I did mention that this album's a little bit more adventurous, a little bit harder to get into than the debut, and I just want to elaborate that there are a lot of really bombastic, intense sections on the album. Some really atonal guitar playing, really a lot of dissonant sections. And at first that might be a little bit harder to get into. You might have to work a little bit at it to really let those sections delve in. Whereas on the first album, it was just really strong melody after strong melody after strong melody. This one here has a lot of weird. I keep using the word avant-garde, but really what I mean is just not your conventional melody, like not your beautiful Italian operatic stuff that really dominated on the debut album, that really dominated Italian progressive rock. Here you get a little bit of that weirdness, a little bit of that King Crimson-esque, ELP-esque kind of shit coming in. And I really think that adds to the drama of the album. So it really works in its favor. Again, you might have to give it a few more listens to let it fully absorb. And there's some really weird sections here that are just batshit crazy, but in the best possible way. So yeah, just prepare yourself for that, guys. But it, it never really goes into like long stretches of just weird experimental doodling, like like weird shit like that. It's just weird. I don't know how to describe it. It's quirky. It's just out there. And with their newfound love for the Moog synthesizer, it was easy to create those sounds. So really great. And again, adds to the drama of the album. And here's the thing about this album as well. I mentioned in my first Banco review that the drama really came from Francesco Di Giacomo's fantastic operatic emotional vocals. And the same is true here. He's fantastic, and he does add a lot of drama. But the music itself is really exciting, really dramatic, and gets really intense as well. So it doesn't really rely on Francesco Di Giacomo for the super exciting parts. It's just kind of built into the music here. So I love those weird avant-garde sections. Awesome. And speaking of Francesco Di Giacomo, just got to mention that his vocal performance here is just so much more well-rounded than the debut. Of course, you get the passion, operatic, the stuff you would expect from Francesco Di Giacomo, just absolutely fantastic. But here he delivers a lot more intensity, a lot more punch to it, and really gets to the heart of the tracks. Like if a track is bombastic and exciting at that point, that matches his vocals and vice versa. Whereas on the debut album, when there were bombastic moments, we wouldn't really get any Francesco Di Giacomo singing. He would come in later on when the song winds down or gets more classical or operatic. So really he learned how to incorporate his voice into those faster, more upbeat sections of the tracks as well, which is absolutely fantastic. And again, he did on the debut album, especially on Il Giardino del Maggio, that one section that I love so much, that only lasted 1 minute of the 18-minute track. Still pissed off about that. But here on this album, we get a lot more. So probably one of his best vocal performances. And overall, I don't know what else to say about the album, guys. It's just awesome. You get the classical influence. You get a little bit more jazz coming in here compared to the debut. A little bit of that jazzy vibe coming in, which I'll mention throughout the review. And the Nocenzi brothers really upgraded and updated their sound. Still has a lot of those uplifting, powerful classical moments, but interspersed with some bombastic, rocking intensity. So Darwin is an absolute masterpiece. So right off the bat, guys, kicking off the album with track 1, we get a 14-minute long epic, L'Evoluzione, which literally means evolution in English. And I referred to this song as the title track earlier on because it kind of is. Really, this is the song dealing with like the actual scientific theory of evolution. And it's a fantastic song. I mean, a lot of people I think cite this as Banco's greatest achievement, their best song, and I definitely do think it's up there. Like this is definitely like top three material. It's just one of those flawless, long form prog epics that just never gets old and really just has so much to offer. I mean, this song is all over the place, and again, this is one of those songs I mentioned where it doesn't have a lot of vocals to it. Maybe there's like three verses at the beginning, a little bit in the middle, maybe a verse at the end, which is not a lot for a 14-minute long composition. This is a largely instrumental piece, but when the vocals do come in, they're absolutely perfect. And Francesco Di Giacomo is on top of his game on this song. Exactly what I was just mentioning about how his vocals just really fit the mood and atmosphere of the song, whether it be slow, operatic, and beautiful, or just pure prog insanity. He's there every step of the way. And it's just a fantastic suite. I mean, the lyrics here are really, really cool. Just so much imagery going on in those lyrics. You know, starting with like the volcanoes erupting and the earth itself forming, to like the creatures being spewed out of the ocean. I think that's the word they use. Initially with like these weird limp bodies, and then over time they progress and they start to get more and more complex and more useful, I should say. So really great imagery in the lyrics. If you have time to Google translate them, I highly recommend it because they're really cool. But really, this track here is all about the music, and really everything fantastic about this album is at play here. The song really, you know, takes a sharp turn in the middle at around the 5-minute mark, and really continues that way right up until the end, right up till the 13-minute mark. And that middle section is just full of all kinds of instrumental extravaganzas. Again, a lot of like more unaccessible stuff going on there. It never really wanders into, you know, powerful operatic classical melodies like it did in the past. It's just really just a showcase for the band's virtuoso skills and their new synthesizers, which really come into prominence in that middle section. So a lot to digest here, guys. A lot to look forward to and keep you coming back for more. I mean, this is a very replayable song because it never really gets old. And again, it's always changing. So just to go through some of the highlights of this song, it starts off with a 1-minute instrumental intro, really slow-paced, organ-driven, but then the harpsichord comes in and the guitar comes in as well, playing these very sparse notes, again, just setting up an atmosphere, this nice slow-building kind of thing that we, you know, looking back to their debut album, the album opened up right away with Rest in Peace, which is just this barnstorming kind of rocker starting off. This one here, it's a little bit more mature. Takes a little bit longer to get into, but if you stick with it, you'll get with it, trust me. And then before you know it, we get the classical piano coming in, and I love the duality or the interplay between the harpsichord and the classical piano, creating that baroque kind of feel, that baroque classical feel. And then before you know, Francesco Di Giacomo comes in, beautiful operatic vocals. I love this section, guys. His vocals just swell perfectly, and when they climax, the whole band comes crashing in with this amazing crescendo, and it's just so epic. You got this organ in the background, and it's really driven by these amazing guitar lines. I mean, they're just so uplifting, so powerful, and almost sounds like a choir in the background, but it's really just the organ. So I don't know how they got that sound, but it's an absolutely larger than life sound, and honestly just sends shivers up and down your spine. And I like how they repeat that a few times. So you get a good solid 2-minute chunk of this amazing operatic epicness before diving into this nice laid back piano, like classical piano thing, giving you like that relief, a release from the tension that the song was really building up, because it did get really, really powerful at points there, and probably the most powerful section on the entire album. Now, this piano section here doesn't last very long because this track is about to dive into the deep end of just prog rock craziness, because before we know it, the synth makes its first appearance, and it comes in with this just sharp transition, this jarring kind of fuzzy synth just comes storming through the mix with this, and then before you know it, the whole band breaks into this weird jazzy swing, and it's just something you wouldn't expect after the operatic climactic moments that opened up the track. You would not expect them to go into like a jazzy swing section, but they totally do. And again, it's just so bombastic, and Francesco Di Giacomo's vocals, again, they're just absolutely frantic here. I'm not going to sing the lyrics, but he's just going all out. And it's really weird. And again, this part here might be hard to get into because it's a little bit jarring. It's a total different shift in the whole mood and tempo of the track after that amazing 4 minute introduction, which is more akin to like what you would expect from your classic Banco del Mutuo Soccorso sound. Now it's just craziness all over the place. There's a jazzy piano solo. So again, more influenced by jazz rather than the classical section on this part. We get some sharp, quirky guitar sections. Again, this whole section, the guitar playing is just there to add like little touches of color. It never really stands out. And at the 6 minute mark, we get some more frantic synthesizer coming in. Again, very ELP sounding, but ELP with purpose. Like it never sounds like these guys are just doodling on their instruments. Then the track gets really weird with this strange clarinet and guitar interplay that sounds pretty dissonant. Again, it doesn't sound like everything's gelling together, but trust me, with more listens, you'll definitely get into that part. And then all of a sudden the song winds down to this dark, ominous section, and the organ comes through, and it just starts picking up the pace. Really traditional sounding clarinet, Italian clarinet playing comes in again, and then it climaxes with this crazy drum solo. So again, the song's going through so much shit going on, and then before you know it, it's reprising that swinging section, the bum 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 ba ba ba, and Francesco Di Giacomo comes back in, and it's just bonkers. Then I think what are we at? We're at like the 10 minute mark at this point, and it gets into another awesome section. This section here gives you a little bit of relief from the craziness. It's more classical. It has this cool kind of melody, this classical piano melody going on. It's kind of happy, kind of playful in contrast to like the nightmarish stuff we just heard before. And really cool, very whimsical. You get some chimes, some bells coming in. And at the 12 minute mark, it ends, so that you get a nice 2 minute chunk of that. And then all of a sudden, we get this weird build, this weird guitar build with this coming in, and then the epic climax of the track with Francesco Di Giacomo reprising that initial opening moment there. Just sends goosebumps down your neck. And then it gets into this almost doomy, like literally Black Sabbath style doomy piano kind of dissonant guitar riff coming in, piano and guitar riff interplay going on, just closing out the track. And then this weird synth comes in, and the song kind of just like fizzles out. Kind of a funny way to end it because really all the instruments stop and you just get this weird funky synth going on. It's just undescribable, guys. It's a hard time describing this track because so much happens and it's just so unconventional. But needless to say, it's a masterpiece, guys. You got to check it out. It's a 10 out of 10, and probably my second favorite song on the album. Track number 2. Love this song title, La Conquista della Posizione Eretta, which basically means the conquest of the erect position. And it's not what you're thinking, guys. Basically, this track is describing how the earliest organisms basically evolved to have spines and to walk and roam the lands. So again, with that evolution theme coming in. Such a great song, such a great song title. And this is a really strange one. This track here is basically an instrumental extravaganza. It's one of those tracks that Banco would do. They did this on their debut album as well with the song Metamorphosis, where basically this song is basically an instrumental. The vocals kick in at about, I think, the 6 minute mark. And it's about a 9 minute track. So another epic length track closing out side one. But really it's an instrumental, and it really takes a long ass time for the vocals to kick in, which is not a bad thing because the instrumentation coming before that is awesome. But it's one of those things where it kind of tricks you into thinking it's going to be an instrumental, but it doesn't. And when the vocals do come in, bam, it's powerful, guys. Really, really is. And the song here, this is one of the more experimental tracks on the album. The first, I'd say, 6 minutes of the track before Francesco Di Giacomo comes in is just absolutely insane. There's just some really tense, really sinister moments on the song, even some laid-back jazzy sections, but most importantly, this is really a synth extravaganza. Like every synth sound that you can get out of the Moog synthesizer was probably employed on this section of the song. And again, this is pretty much as far away from their debut album as you can get. It's just absolutely crazy, just time changes everywhere. A cool groovy bass line, which I really like at points as well. And some really big epic synth moments, like the main, I guess you can call it the main melody of the first half of the track, if you could even say this track has a main melody. But it's really big, epic, larger than life. The whole that comes in every once in a while. Just such an epic, larger than life riff. I think it's a really powerful moment. But in between that, you get all kinds of crazy synth solos and atonal guitar, jazzy piano sections. Just absolutely insane. Then, as I mentioned, at the 5 minute mark, the 5 minute 30 second mark, it starts winding down, and you get this kind of melancholic, haunting melody coming in. And at 6:15, I got the timestamps for you guys. Francesco Di Giacomo comes in. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful vocals. I mean, as operatic as you can get. And I love how the bass is really driving this section, creating this kind of mournful, sorrowful kind of atmosphere. And Francesco Di Giacomo just builds and builds his vocals like only he can, and it just gets so climactic. But then later on in the vocal section, and it doesn't last very long, we get this weird synthesizer, this fuzzy kind of sound going on in the background. And it's strange because it doesn't really gel with the epic atmosphere that the bass and the underlying organ is creating, and of course, Di Giacomo's vocals. So again, adding in a little bit of dissonance there, a little bit of weirdness to kind of throw you off and distract you from the main melody, which sounds like they're purposely making the song worse than it has to be. But trust me, guys, with multiple listens, it just all comes together. There's no other way to describe it. These guys were just musical geniuses, and they really made it work. And again, the song kind of just ends off with some organ, or actually, I believe it's synthesizer. So, just an insane song, 9 minutes long. I mean, coming off that epic 14-minute title track, or whatever you want to call it, it was pretty exhausting. But get ready for another exhausting track. I mean, this song here will take everything out of you, both mentally and physically. You can get pretty into it. It's a great song. So, La Conquista della Posizione Eretta, I gave the first track a 10, so I'm feeling a 9.5 for this one, a strong 9.5. Flipping the album over to side 2, guys, we get an awesome short 3.5 minute instrumental song, Danza dei Grandi Rettili, which means the dance of the giant reptiles. 3 guesses what that means. It's pretty self-explanatory. And yeah, it's technically the first and only instrumental on the album, but really all these songs could kind of be considered instrumentals. And it's awesome. I mean, it would have been so easy for the band to just say, okay, you know what? We put 2 epics on side 1. We just put all our energy into that. Side 2, let's just put a few filler tracks, here and there. And even if they did, this album still would have been fantastic. But they didn't, and side 2 is just as strong as side 1. This song here, overall, it's my least favorite song on the album, but it's still fantastic. So that just goes to show how great this album really is. And it's so cool. Again, unlike anything on their debut, this song here really shows that these dudes were listening to some good-ass jazz. Starts off with this chamber jazz piano and bass, and it's just really like waltzy, and you can like dance along to it, which I guess is the whole point to it. Very cool, very laid back, just sit back and relax kind of thing. Some bluesy guitar coming in. But then all of a sudden we get the main theme of the track, which is really anthemic and really catchy. It just sticks in your head. And I should mention the anthemic thing I'm talking about is totally synthesized. So again, the synthesizer played a huge role on this album here. Then the middle section gets this cool little bass solo with some jazz piano in the background. But some pretty avant-garde stuff going on in the middle there. So a little bit of unaccessibility to keep your interest going before kicking back into the main melody of the song. Just an awesome 3.5 minute track, unlike anything else on side 1. And I really think this is kind of your breather to kind of prepare for the madness that's about to ensue on the next track. So yeah, it serves an amazing purpose on the album. And it's so catchy for an instrumental. Sorry guys, just getting excited about this shit. This song here, a solid 8.5 out of 10. Alright guys, I don't say this every day, but this next track here, Cento Occhi, is one of the best songs ever. And I can't say it any other way. This song's an absolute masterpiece. And it's only my 3rd favorite song on the album, behind the opening track and number 1, which is still coming up. And this song here is just absolutely amazing. Absolutely fucking amazing from start to finish. Everything about it is incredible, and it really has every element of the album to dig into. So, if you want a nice, short, succinct, synthesized version of this album in one 5.5 minute track, this is it. It's just amazing. The title means 100 hands and 100 eyes. And it's a really inspirational song, actually. It's about humans discovering that they have the potential to join forces and do so much more together than apart as a band of hunters and gatherers and things like that, which is really, really inspiring, really cool, and just a testament to the whole human spirit. But musically, this song here just gets me every fucking time. Starts off totally false intro with this triumphant sounding kind of synth section, and then it dives into the madness. This is probably the most frantic section of the whole album. We got this organ riff in the background just going crazy, like the if you like fast-paced organ riffs, you're gonna absolutely love this track. And then we get this weird synth over that, absolutely squealing, like screaming at the top of its lungs. Then Francesco Di Giacomo enters in, and he's singing all like he's extending his notes and creating this ominous kind of vibe with that frantic shit going on in the background. Crazy. Then at the 1 minute 30 second mark, bam, classical piano solo. Just fucking throwing that in there, bringing you right back to the debut album. Before going back into this crazy synth section, we get the chorus, the da-na-na-na-na-na, which is really operatic, really, classic Francesco Di Giacomo. But he puts a lot of balls into it. This isn't like the soft, mournful kind of vocals. This is really him singing from the guts, which is fucking awesome. We even get like this playful synth riff coming in, and they kind of mirror that with the vocals there. Then at the 3 minute 20 second mark, again, bam, total change in the song. It gets into this mournful, haunting section with this. And again, I should have mentioned this, but during the chorus, the second chorus, and the second vocal section, we get dual vocals with Vittorio Nocenzi and Francesco Di Giacomo, which is really fitting given that this song is about the human race coming together as one. So it's really cool hearing some backup vocals. We never really get that on the album so far. So really cool, giving it a little bit of that ballsier edge. And then before you know it, at the 4 minute mark, one of the greatest moments of all time. I mean, and again, after that haunting chillin' section with the dual vocals there, you're not expecting this, but at the 4 minute mark, we get into one of the best fucking moments ever. We get this amazing piano just going nuts in the background with this heavy organ riff going over that. And it just has this amazing drive to it. It's just so motivational. It's just fucking love it. You guys got to hear this song. And then we get some amazing vocals. And then at the end, we get this awesome hoo, ha, hoo kind of chorus coming in there. I'm just picturing these humans just joining forces. It's just so awesome, so motivational. This song's got it all. So many changes, but every single part of the song is memorable. And it's a song that it didn't stand out as one of the best on first listen, but I'll tell you guys, to this day, this is one of my favorite prog songs of all time. This album gave birth to 3 of my favorite prog songs. The first track, this one, and then the song coming up. So this one here, I won't even hesitate to give it a 10 out of 10. Absolutely love it. 750.000 anni fa l'amore. There you go, guys. That's the first and last time I'm going to be saying the name of this track because it's so fucking long. But it means 750,000 years ago. Love. I know it's a cheesy title. I know what you're thinking. This song's going to be a cheese fest. This is the one, guys. This really is the one. I just want to cut the shit and say this is my favorite song on the album. This may be one of my favorite... Well, it is one of my favorite songs of all time, and it may be my favorite ballad of all time. Honestly, guys, words cannot describe how emotional this song makes me. I mean, this song here is one of the most heartfelt, passionate songs of all time. And it's basically a classical opera tune. And I bet you guys are thinking, like, why would you pick this out of all the crazy progressive stuff on the album to be your favorite on the album? Now, it's nothing against the overall sound of this album, because again, this song sounds nothing like it. But I just can't deny how it makes me feel. This song here just almost brings a tear to my eye every time, and it has brought tears to my eyes on a few occasions. The first one being the first time I heard the song, I was just overwhelmed with emotion. And really, it's all because of Francesco Di Giacomo. This rivals like stuff like Bohemian Rhapsody, anything by Queen, anything by Zeppelin, anything by Purple, as one of the greatest vocal performances of all time. This guy just really gives it his all, and honestly, if this was the only song the guy recorded, he would go down in history as being a legend, because this is just... honestly breathtaking. His vocal performance here is just incredibly emotional, incredibly passionate, and just the energy he puts into it is ridiculous. And I've seen it live, and you could tell when he's singing this, he's closing his eyes and he's just singing his heart out. He's just gushing his heart out. Oh, it's just, I can't even describe how amazing it is. And really, in the background, you get the beautiful, one of the most beautiful, haunting piano melodies of all time. I mean, it just sticks in your head. I don't know if Vittorio Nocenzi created this piano melody or if it was taken from a classical tune, but if he created it, the man is a fucking genius. Well, he already is a genius, but in terms of classical music, he is as well. It's just absolutely beautiful. And they do bring in the prog. Don't let me fool you guys. Right in the middle of this amazingly beautiful ballad, we get this weird, dark, ominous synth section with these loud, larger-than-life kind of synth sections. And at first, I thought it kind of ruined the track. I'm like, why are they just shoehorning this part in? But it builds, and it gets extremely epic, and it kind of builds the tension, because then when you kick back into the original theme of the track, it makes it even more powerful. It gives it that resolve, that kind of 360 kind of feeling after that dark, ominous midsection. So still a lot of progressive stuff to latch onto if you're a fan of that stuff. And the climax at the end, when the piano just swells and the vocals swell to their absolute maximum, it's just indescribable, guys. And even right down to the lyrics. I mean, you could interpret this song as a cheesy ballad about finding love millions of, or I guess 750,000 years ago. But I think there's more to it than that. If you actually read the lyrics, you kind of see this sad tale of a guy or some being looking at this woman in the distance and contemplating how much he loves her and realizing that she'll never love him and she'll run away screaming if he pops out. So my interpretation of the song is that this guy is a Neanderthal, because we all know that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, basically humans, they kind of coexisted at this weird point in history. I don't know if the time frame in the song is accurate, but that's besides the point. And it just really shows this kind of struggle with discovering these human emotions. So just a very profound song. And I think that twist there, if you think about it that way, is a pretty unique aspect of the track. Him being what do you call it, a Neanderthal, and the woman he's looking at being a Homo sapien. Really cool stuff. But yeah, it goes without saying, guys, I'm going to give this track a 10 out of 10. It's just, what more can be said about it? Now, this one here is a pretty cool, unique track on the album. Miserere, alla Storia. And basically that translates to misery of the story, or the miserable story, something like that. And it's just a really dark, ominous track, both lyrically and musically. Lyrically, it's describing the rise of civilization, the rise of man, just talking about building the sphinxes and the pyramids, and kind of casting aside human values in the pursuit of creating these large, epic things. So kind of like, if you guys are Rush fans, kind of like Hemispheres, when the god dying Apollo comes in and takes over. But anyway, that's a rant for a different day. But really just showing like the downside of developing as a human race, which is really cool, because you think about it as a good thing to really cast aside your primitive nature and desire greater and grander things, but you lose a lot when you do that. And this song here is a perfect metaphor for that. Sorry if I'm butchering like what the song's actually about, but that's what it means to me. And it's just a great song. Really dark. Starts off with this upbeat organ riff that has like this kind of sinister vibe to it. Then it fades out and we get this dark, ominous clarinet section. Again, great clarinet playing, or clarino, or whatever it's called. It's a weird Italian version of a clarinet, creating this dark atmosphere. And speaking of darkness, we get Francesco Di Giacomo coming after that track that just came before this, where his voice was at its most beautiful. I think they intentionally did this. He sounds like he's straight out of hell. He's singing this kind of spoken word section, and his voice is absolutely demonic. I mean, I don't know what effect they put to his voice, but he sounds absolutely evil, and it just builds up, and it's just, my jaw dropped the first time I heard it. I couldn't believe how fucking crazy he sounded on this section. Then the next 3 minutes of the song's 6 minutes, by the way. The next 3 minutes, it brings back that original frantic organ riff, but here we get some heavy, dark guitar riffs going on here, some Tony Iommi style shit just cutting through, and this wailing atonal guitar solo comes through as well, with the crazy riff going through the basically that classic Hammond organ riff that opened up the track. And then it closes with a reprise of that ominous clarinet section. So really, this song here is one of the darkest, probably the heaviest song on the album, and really sinister shit. And again, mostly an instrumental, except for that like 20 seconds of spoken word thing. The whole thing's pretty much instrumental. So yeah, make of that what you will. But yeah, Miserere, alla, Storia, I'll definitely give this one a 9 out of 10. Yeah, that sounds fair. Closing this whole goddamn thing off, we get another extremely long, extremely hard to pronounce song title. I'm going to attempt it, I can't embarrass myself as an Italian. Ed ora io domando tempo al tempo, ed egli mi risponde non ne ho. That's right, everything I just said was the title of this track, and it basically translates to, and now I demanded from Father Time for some time, and he responded, I don't got any. Yeah, that make of that what you will. It's a fucking crazy song title. But this song here is really, I think, like the sleeper track on the album. Like this one here, you listen to it first, it just sounds like a nice kind of outro to the album. But over time, this song really took on a life of its own for me. I love how this song here, out of everything they've done so far in their entire career, this one here is just pure traditional Italian music. I mean, sure, it has some progressive moments here or there, but really with that classic Italian clarinet sound and harpsichord, this is just pure traditional Italian music. It has a very waltzy kind of vibe, kind of like a Il Danza di Grandi, Rettili, that instrumental at the beginning. But this one here is much less jazzy. This one here is just really, really traditional. And it has this awesome kind of uplifting vibe around it. Now, the most notable thing about the track from first listen is you get these squeaky kind of sounds. And at first I was thinking like, oh, that's weird. Maybe it's just another sound effect they're throwing in there just to be quirky. But no, it actually has to do with the theme of the track, which is basically talking about how the wheels of time are always in motion and things are always going to change. And it's actually pretty deep. It's actually pretty impressive. And they incorporated that wheel there. The first line where he sings, Rota eterna, rota pesanta. That means eternal wheel, heavy wheel. So really, this song is personifying time as this wheel that just keeps on chugging. It's just heavy and just crushes everyone underneath. You can't escape Father Time. And you can ask for more time as much as you want. You won't get it. You only have as much as what's given to you from the onset of your birth. So really, really interesting stuff. And yeah, overall the music is just fantastic. Again, very traditional Italian. You get that waltzy marching band kind of feel going on. And it sounds like something you would hear. When I was a kid, we would go to these this religious festival, like the Festival of St. Anthony, the Festival of St. Nicola, the patron saints of my grandparents' town in Italy. Sorry, I don't know. I'm having trouble talking about this right now. But basically, they would always have this marching band, and I swear to God, this song could have been played by that band. It just sounds so similar, so traditional, and I don't know. Maybe I just like it because I like traditional Italian music. I don't know. That's just me, but it's a cool way to end off the album on a nice positive note, I would say, and a very deep and melancholic note as well with the lyrics. But the music's pretty uplifting, and yeah, that closed out the album. In terms of a rating, I really like this. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I was debating an 8.5, but I got to give it a 9 out of 10. I like it slightly better than the Dance of the Giant Reptiles. By a little bit. Has a soft spot in my heart. So anyway, guys, I guess that's the end of the album. I'm trying to milk this thing because I love talking about it so much. I'm so enthusiastic about this album, and I really think it is a masterpiece. Honestly, if this... if not the best album in their discography, definitely the second best. It's debatable. Sometimes I feel like the next one, Io Sono Nato Libero, is just slightly better, slightly more advanced and mature. But this album here has the variety, it has the eccentricity, and I don't know. It's debatable. We'll see what my opinion is next week when I review that album. That's definitely going to be the next review because I really do think that this trilogy really needs to be taken in as a whole. Because it's just such a tight point in time, 1972 to early 1973, where this band just stormed onto the scene and just had this amazing burst of creativity that would be unmatched throughout the rest of their entire career. Although they do have other good albums, nothing touches the magnificence of these three. So definitely going to be doing that next. So stay tuned, guys, and peace out, rock on, and listen to some Italian music. You won't regret it.